Are you ready to finish Book 1, Tales from the Odyssey? Find out what happens to Odysseus? Let's read. Chapter 9, Only Odysseus. Odysseus clung to the lurching ship until the storm began to rip it apart. Then, as the rest of the ship was torn to splinters, he lashed the mast and keeled together, making a raft. For hours, Odysseus clung to the raft for dear life as wild winds tossed him over the waves. Darkness soon covered the ocean. As the sea grew calmer, Odysseus feared his raft might be drifting back toward the cave of Scylla and the whirlpool of Charybdis. All through the night he prayed to the gods to spare him from the monsters. But as dawn broke, Odysseus saw Scylla's cave rising from the sea, and he heard the awful roar of Charybdis. He could feel the black waters of Charybdis's whirlpool begin to pull at his raft. Odysseus's prayers had been in vain. His raft was being sucked into the black swirling mouth of Charybdis. His body would soon join those of all the other sailors who had drowned in the terrible whirlpool. But just as he was about to be sucked into the monster's mouth, a mighty wave swept Odysseus from his raft. The wave carried him away from the whirlpool, over the sea, onto the shores of Scylla's cliff. Odysseus flung himself from the water and grabbed the trunk of a huge fig tree. He clung to the tree like a bat. Holding on with all his strength, he waited for the whirlpool monster to vomit up his raft. Finally, the raft was hurled from the black abyss and sent swirling over the waves. When it was within reach, Odysseus let go of the tree and plunged into the sea. He grabbed the edge of the raft and heaved himself aboard. Then he began rowing madly with his hands. He rowed and rowed. He rowed away from Charybdis. He rowed past the cliff of Scylla. He rowed until he was safe from both dreaded sea monsters. For 9 days and 9 nights, Odysseus drifted on his raft. He had no food and no water. He had no idea where he was going or how he would ever get home. As he drifted over the open sea, he mourned the loss of all his comrades. He grieved for the family he feared he would never see again. Finally, on the 10th day, the waves tossed Odysseus and his raft onto the shore of a mysterious island. Chapter 10 is called Calypso, and it's our final chapter. Odysseus lay on the sandy beach, tired to the bone and filled with despair. He had not slept in 10 days. Now that he was safe on shore, he was tortured by visions of his men dangling from the mouths of the monstrous Scylla. Over and over he saw his comrades devoured by monsters or drowned in the waves, bobbing like seabirds, then vanishing one by one. Friends and warriors, men he had journeyed with for 12 long years. They were now gone. He had lost them all. Only the last words of Tiresias, the blind prophet, were yet to come to pass. You alone might escape, but if you do, you will be a broken man. You will find great trouble in your house. Odysseus could not bear the thought that Penelope, his wife, and Telemachus, his son, might be suffering in Ithaca. He desperately wanted to protect them. In spite of his despair, he felt a fierce determination to return home. Nearly blind with exhaustion and grief, Odysseus pulled himself up from the sand and began walking in search of help. He had not gone far before he came upon 4 streams. The bubbling waters wound through lush green meadows filled with violets, parsley, and wild celery. Just beyond the streams was a rocky hillside. Set deep in the rocks was a huge cave. Long vines trailed around the mouth of the cave. Clusters of ripe grapes hung from the vines. Beautiful trees grew along the path that led to the cave. Alder, aspen, and sweet-smelling cypress. Owls, falcons, and sea ravens had built their nests in the boughs of the trees. Odysseus smelled the sweet scent of burning cedar and sandalwood. Like someone lost in a dream, Odysseus stumbled slowly toward the cave's entrance. When he peered inside, he saw a great fire blazing in the hearth. Beside the hearth sat a beautiful woman at a loom. She shone with the light of a goddess. She was weaving and singing in a lovely voice. As her song ended, the goddess turned and smiled at Odysseus. "Hello, Odysseus," she said. "I am Calypso, daughter of Atlas. Hermes told me you might come. Odysseus was surprised that the goddess knew his name, but he was too weary even to speak. Calypso looked at Odysseus for a long time. Then she continued in her calm, lovely voice. I know what has happened to you, she said. Your men killed the cattle of the sun god. In a rage, Helios threatened to take away his light forever, from men and from the gods. Zeus and the other gods of Mount Olympus were forced to take revenge against you. Zeus smashed your ship with a thunderbolt and hurled your warriors into the sea. They drowned before your eyes. Odysseus nodded. You must be very tired, Odysseus, Calypso said kindly. Come inside. Rest here in my home. Without a word, Odysseus stepped into the cave of the beautiful goddess. He stumbled to the hearth and lay down close to the fire. After his terrible journey, he was indeed a broken man. His heart and body ached almost more than he could bear. As Odysseus stared at the fire in the hearth, the goddess began to sing her song again. Odysseus was reminded of the singing of the sirens, but Calypso's song did not make him go mad or lure him to a watery death. Instead, as Odysseus listened, all the pain and horror of his journey slowly dissolved around him. He felt peaceful and calm for the first time in many weeks. Odysseus closed his eyes, and in the peaceful warmth of Calypso's cave, he finally fell asleep. That's the end of part 1, which is where we part. This is where we stop. However, there is a part 2. One sec. Be right back. That was easier to find than I thought. This is part 2 of Tales from the Odyssey. Just like part 1, it's made up of 3 short books that make up one big book. Part 2 tells the story of Penelope and Telemachus. It turns out that while Odysseus has been away all these years, so far 12, and it's about to be more, Penelope's had trouble at home. She's had many suitors, men who are coming and trying to marry her. Her son has grown up, and he's not having it. But at the same time, he can't fight off all these suitors. So they have indeed had very bad luck at home, just as was predicted. You get the end of Odysseus' story. No spoilers from me, unless you ask me, and then I'll be happy to tell you what happens if you don't want to read the book. But you get the end of Odysseus' story. You get Penelope and Telemachus' story, and it's a really great book. I'm going to put a link in the slideshow. You can ask your mom and dad if they might order it for you. I think it's $6 on Amazon, so not too bad. And if you'd like to finish the story, you can. If you just want me to tell you what happens, talk to me in class, and I'll be happy to do it. I really hope you've enjoyed the Odyssey. On the final slide, I would just like you to tell me what you thought of the book. Would you recommend it to someone? Why or why not? What'd you like about it? What did you not like about it? Can't wait to see what you think. I'll talk to you later.